So our first president of the United States under the new Constitution was George Washington. One of the first things he does is set up a cabinet of his advisors. And since this is not in the Constitution, we call this part of the unwritten Constitution. He sets a precedent or an example by only serving 2 terms, and those are 4 years for each term. So that would be a total of 8 years. To make sure the economy was looking good, one of Washington's advisors was Alexander Hamilton, and his idea was to raise taxes through tariffs on trade and create a national bank so people could invest money and the government could use that money. One of the first tests of the national government was when there was a tariff or a tax put on whiskey and a rebellion broke out. Washington actually goes down and helps set that rebellion down. Our next president, second president, was John Adams. He was a Federalist, and one of the big mistakes he does is anyone who criticized him, he kind of either deported them if they were French immigrants or put them in jail. And these were called the Alien and Sedition Acts. It really was not good for the country, and it made the Federalists look bad. The states of Virginia and Kentucky tried to pass these resolutions or laws that said they could nullify or cancel or void federal laws, but it was unconstitutional because the federal government has more power than the states. States cannot tell the federal government what to do. Because Adams' presidency wasn't too popular, Thomas Jefferson becomes president, and he was a Democratic Republican. Under his administration, the Marbury v. Madison case happened where there was judicial review, and very importantly, the purchase of Louisiana, which doubles the size of the United States and gives us access to the Mississippi. So our first president, George Washington, he had no political party, he was against them, but he does set up a cabinet of advisors to help him with the economy, with war, etc. This is as part of the unwritten Constitution. It's a power the government has, but it's not written there. His advisor, Secretary of Treasury Alexander Hamilton, comes up with a plan to create trust in the U.S. economy. One of the big things was the U.S. National Bank to encourage savings and investment. Some people felt that this was only going to help out wealthy merchants or people who sold goods and services in the North. So it wasn't as popular as many would like. During the Whiskey Rebellion, farmers rebelled because they did not like the tax or tariff that was put on place. And so George Washington actually gets on horse and leads the army to stop this rebellion. This was important because it demonstrated that the power of the federal government was in good standing and could take care of internal rebellions or issues. This made people confident that the U.S. was a good place to live and to do business. Now, because Hamilton's bank wasn't popular, there were 2 thoughts that came about with the Constitution. There was those called loose constructionists, or loose interpretation, and they felt that the government can make laws to fit the needs of society under the necessary and proper clause or the elastic clause. Others, like Thomas Jefferson, said that's not okay because it's not in the Constitution, and they called themselves strict constructionists. When the French Revolution broke out, many of the Democratic Republicans with Thomas Jefferson thought the United States should help France since they helped the Americans during the American Revolution. But Washington said we were a new nation, we were weak, and we needed to kind of stay neutral or not get involved during the French Revolution. So the U.S. had a policy of neutrality, which means not getting involved. Our second president was our first political party president, John Adams. He was a Federalist, and he believed in a strong federal government. He very much favored the national bank, and he was a fan of Hamilton. On the other side of the coin, we had the Democratic Republicans. They were more of our farmers. Many of them happened to be Southerners, and they supported Thomas Jefferson, and they were against this bank. So there was a big fight over this bank. So we have manufacturers and those working in factories, etc. in the North, under the Federalists, and those against them, the Democratic Republicans. Congress, who was mostly Federalists, and Adams passed laws called the Alien and Sedition Acts. Alien is a term for immigrant, and it was mostly French immigrants, and many of them worked together with other Democratic Republicans in the U.S. to criticize the Federalist policies. And what would happen under these laws is you could go to jail or be deported, which means removed from the country if you weren't a permanent resident. This was very unpopular, even among many Federalists, because they thought it was overstepping the bounds of the government. It was criticizing our First Amendment right of free speech. Thomas Jefferson becomes our third president as a Democratic Republican, and that was an easy victory in some ways because of the unpopular Federalists. Though it was a close election, the Federalists should have easily won, but because of the Alien Sedition Acts, did not do so. So as we see on this map here, the major achievement by Thomas Jefferson was purchasing the Louisiana Territory from France, from Napoleon. We got the port of New Orleans, which was very important for trade, so that's going to help the U.S. economy. By Jefferson buying this, it doubles the size of the U.S., and it pushes Americans further out west. They will come into lots of conflict with Native Americans, and unfortunately lots of blood will be shed as a result. During this purchase, it does bring up another constitutional question. Does the government have the power to buy land from foreign nations? Now, Jefferson called himself a strict constructionist when he was not president, so he did not believe the government should have this power. However, this will change as he becomes president. He will be a loose constructionist, which means he thinks it's okay for the government to make laws and use actions that will help the country as the society changes.